Sige. So, can you still hear me, dears? Okay pa? Carry pa? Okay lang?
Yes, sir. Go.
Alright. Sige, so we're going to start now with renal function. So, gahapon, katong atong pre-recorded lecture, actually, ang atong na-discuss na ato was the start of lab safety, quality assurance, and microscope. So, if you haven't watched the lecture, please do so. But again, feel ako sa inyong mind, anana sa inyong mind kay, sir, di na ako walang tawanak kay may gosh, gas-gas na. Since first year pa ko aning lab safety, and di ka po yung ako sa balik-balik, okay? Pwede na po, depende na ninyo. Alright? But the importance lang ato kay na ako mga mnemonics na i-share. No? Like how to remember the NFPA, diamond symbol, sa itong mga colors, kung sa itong mga meaning sa numbers, alright? Ito kung di pang chika dito. And sa QA po, may mga acronyms dito na magawas po sa boards. Like, sa meaning sa PDCA, PDSA, DMAIC, kato, magawas mo na sa boards as in, like, sige siya gawas, no? And I think nagawas ko sa yung pre-test. Actually, paglatar ako sa scores sa yung pre-test, ano ko na, doon ko naman sa scores ko. Di na naging mo lecture. Di na mo lecture ko, ayaw na lang. Sige, so for the rest of the semester, magbasa na lang mo o strategy. Sige lang. Ato dyan kung important, paalag, delete as well. Anyway, that's another issue. Ayun, so, again, akong gi-challenge and akong gi-required yun ang gahapon na section. Also, kamutanan, akong gina-required yun, dears, na for this conference sa CM, please, read and study Strassinger cover to cover. Alright? You don't have any excuses. Ayaw yun, no? Because Strassinger is one of the easier books to read and study in medtech, no? So, kani siya ang medyo kaya rin natin makuman, no? Compared to Mayho and Bailey, mga challenging to sila. But for Strassinger pang good sa urinalysis, it's very user-friendly, di siya technical, and medyo sa'yo na siya sakto. So, di siya inanaka, taxing in terms of studying. So, mahuman mo siya from cover to cover. In the board exam, that's what I did. Nag-read ko from the start until the finish of Strassinger, and then na-repeat na ko siya mga twice or thrice. So, at least karon, if mahuman na ninyo, pag-abot sa boards, pag-review ninyo, makay mo naman na, okay, tapos na to. I have finished reading, carry na. Alright? And aside from that, also I mentioned the notes of Sir Errol. Yes, from Pioneer, the best yun. As in, I tell you, dears, the best. No? So, kanakong notes na dina-share ninyo, dears, it's highly inspired. And I think ako dyan siya di-copy ang format sa note ni Sir Errol. Alright? So, at least you'll get a feel of the notes already. Na concise na siya, na brief, no? And the best yun siya. No? So, don't be shocked, surprised na lang. If you have copies of the notes of Sir Errol, from previous years or previous batches na yung kaila, medyo same lang yung format. Alright? So, muna siya. Pero na ako mga gi-add na additional information na. Alright? But again, katong note ni Sir Errol from Pioneer, hindi ko siya kung gi-studyhan for boards. Plus, Strassinger, okay na din siya. Now, remember again that clinical microscopy, it's a minor subject in the board exam. No? It's only 10%. But that 10% is a matter of life and death. Okay? Bahala nag 10% na, bahala minor, we always have to exert the same effort, both major or minor. Regardless if major or minor subject na siya, ato na siya important. Okay? Of course, we all know ang feeling na really important. Charot, saka lang. Okay? Muna siya reason na nung all too well. Charot. Anyway, ayan. Tapos, don't forget also that I emphasize kahapon that clinical microscopy in the recent board exams, it's getting more challenging now. I have a friend na akong batchmate, who knows a friend, I have a friend na ang napapahagbong niya is ClinMic. Alright? Kaya iyang ClinMic is 50, I think, or something. So naka-pull down siya sa iyang rating. Ang iba niya subjects, okay na. Pero ang ClinMic, maoy napapahagbong niya. O diba? So bahala 10% or 20% na lang siya, dears, it still matters. Okay? Maka-affect siya sa inyong grade sa board exam. Okay? So we have to exert the same effort pa, and ito na siyang studyhan judicado. Alright? So again, for this confident years, I'm very much sure you can finish your Strassinger before or on December 10. Before December 10, makaman din na ninyo. Alright? So bisag kada night lang, mag-allocate mo ko sa ka-chapter sa Strassinger. Okay kayo. No? So, ang imong Strass, kimurag mga 14 chapters, if I'm not mistaken, at apil ng vaginal secretions. O di 14 days, 2 weeks, nakatuon na ka, di ba? So, if you want to study every chapter by chapter, yung bato na lang is, for tonight, if kayo one chapter, i-repeat ng chapter twice or thrice. And then pagkauban ako ng another chapter, repeat it twice or thrice. And then kung napakay time before component, you start again from the very beginning until the end, o diba? One chapter, tanan na diba, diba? So that's repetition. Saro dili mo ma-memorize, saro dili mo perfect ng component. Alright? So that's how I do it also. Okay? So, muna siya mga study tips. Charot. Okay? So, wala lang, chika lang. Kaya naka-chika gahapon. So, of course, ayan. Okay, so for today, again, that's renal function. We're going to start with renal function. Now, heads up lang, dears, renal function, it's very much complicated. Okay? Ako na siyang iingon ninyo daan, the renal physiology or the functions of the kidneys and how it happens and everything is very complicated. In medicine, naging na siya a separate topic and of course, discussion. Alright? And dagan kong friends sa med, nag-ingon na, shucks, ang kidneys, very difficult to study. So, actually, gahapon, nag-try kong study yun, medyo challenging to try to understand. No? Pero I'll do my best to make it simple lang. And we'll do it na simple lang ang pag-discuss. In a way, ang atong target lang naman is for us to know kung how is the urine formed and what are the substances that are reabsorbed, secreted ba, or filtered. Okay? So, muna siya itong target. Okay? So, if mo proceed to medicine, I'm sure, ubay-ubay ninyo mo medicine, dito na ang tinuon na discussion yun and laban when it comes to the kidneys. Alright? But for us here, again, more on the basics na muna tayo overview. Alright? So, again, we'll start first with your renal function. So, for renal function, of course, nasa pangalan na, we're going to start first with your kidneys. No? So, your kidneys are bean-shaped organs, as you can see, bean-shaped, mara siya o bean. Bean-shaped organs located retroperitoneally, meaning nasa sa likod sa imong abdominal wall. Alright? And according to Branzel, this is your organs or your kidneys are the true regulators of the body because ang kidneys mismo ang mag-decide kung kinsa iyang ipa-stay kung kinsa iyang ipa-let go, o diba? Because siya mo decide kung sa na substances iyang i-reabsorb and kung sa po na substances iyang i-secrete or excrete. Alright? So that's why siya ang considered to be the true regulators of the body. Now, for the parts of the kidneys, as you can see, there is the renal hilus, kani siya. Renal hilum, kani dapita. So this is where the veins and the arteries coming from the heart and from the body will enter the kidneys. Alright? And then, of course, for the kidneys itself, you have the cortex, which is, of course, the outer layer, and the inner medulla or medulla. No? So medulla or inner medulla. As you can see, the inner medulla is shaped into pyramids. No? Ayan, itong mga darker regions here. Ayan. So these are known as the renal pyramids. Alright? So that's the medulla. And the outer is, again, it's a cortex. Alright. Now, kanimo ang renal medulla, it's shaped in pyramids. And sa iyahang tip or apex, dira mo form of what we call mga calyx. Okay, mga calyx, no? So calyx, it could be minor and major. So minor calyx, it will form into major calyx, and this major calyx will then form together, mag-meet sila diri sa renal pelvis. And this renal pelvis, sila na mo collect sa urine, padulong na sa ureter. And then from the ureter, padulong sa bladder, and then finally, before urinating, no, sa bladder siya mag-store. Alright? So sa bladder siya mag-wait for urination. Alright. Now, cortex, again, it's known as the exclusive site for filtration. Why? Because in the cortex, you can see the glomerulus there. So the glomerulus is located in the cortex. Whereas for medulla, the medulla is where concentration of urine happens because your loop of Henle, naa siya diri sa imong medulla makitaan. Okay? Alright. So those are the general basic structures of your kidneys. And of course, again, the kidneys are part of the system, urinary system in the body. So again, you have two kidneys. Your lower kidney is your left kidney, is lower sa right because your right kidney is medyo na anuhan siya sa ay liver. Left kidney ba ang lower? Parang higher ang left kidney. But anyway, sige. So that's, di ba sa dili siya equal o area or dili siya equal o height. Okay, ayan. And then of course you have two ureters padulong sa bladder. The bladder will store the urine before urination. Okay, and your bladder again is made up of transitional muscle, meaning pwede siyang mo relax and pwede po siyang mo contract depending on the need. All right. Okay. Then of course you have the urethra. The urethra is the tube-like structure from the bladder para magawa sa ihi. Now, it depends, di ba? Females usually have shorter urethra compared to males, all right? Ang males usually mabot siya 24 cm. Depende if ducks siya. Depende if ducks or tubes. So, for females, it's always shorter, no? 4 cm. That's why females are more prone to urinary tract infections. Jo, yes, bakit? Nangyari. Hindi klaro? Yes?
Wala sir, so napindot na ako sir, sorry.
Okay, alright. Nakuyawan pa, pinakog na disconnect ko. Sige na, okay na. No problem, sige. Okay, so again, urethra, di ba? That's the tube kung asa mo sa ihi for the bladder. Alright. Now, the urethra again varies. Your males have, no kita, have longer urethra. Pwede siya mabutog 24 cm depending, again, on the size. And for females, it's quite shorter, 4 cm. That's why your females, as I mentioned, they are more prone to UTI, no urinary tract infections, because their urethra are quite shorter. All right, okay. Tapos, of course, the basics, no? And the micturition reflex. When you say micturition reflex, I'm not sure if makita ra ba here. Makita ra micturition. Klaro ra or ano siya glide? Okay ra. Micturition. Okay? Maklaro ra. The micturition reflex, this means your urge to urinate. Alright? And usually, once, kung say volume sa bladder na mo signify na or mo alert na sa brain na mangihi na ka, it's about 150 ml, no? So, pag abot ng 150 ml of urine na sa imong bladder, mo signify na siya or mo send na siya reflex sa imong brain na, uy girl, kailangan na ka mangihi. Alright? And that is known as the micturition reflex. Alright? Naklaro na, ears? Okay lang? Maklaro na?
Yes, sir. Okay lang.
Thank you. Alright, salamat sa knowledge. Okay, so that's for the basic components. Alright, take note of that. So that's for the kidneys. Alright. Now, of course, we go down to the major, the main, functional units of your kidneys, and that is your nephrons, of course. Do not be confused with nephrons and neurons, ha? Sana naman. For your medtech, ha? Ako confused pa sa nephrons o neurons. Nako, sinasabi ko talaga. Alright? So, nephrons is for the kidneys, neurons for the brain. Okay. Now, nephrons, again, these are the functional units of the kidneys. There's approximately about 1 to 1.5 million of nephrons in each kidney. So, nakay mga 2 million nephrons tanan-tanan, or 3 million, no? Basta 1 to 1.5 per kidney. And your nephrons, they have two types, no? There are two types. You have cortical and the juxtamedullary. When I say cortical, these are the nephrons talaga that di siya maabot sa medulla, no? Uto ba siya sa cortex, alright? And for your juxtamedullary, maabot siya sa imong medulla. Taas iyang loop of Henry, as in like intensity ang pagka-lower, ganun, okay? Iyang loop of Henry naabot sa medulla, alright? As you can see sa picture, the juxtamedullary, as you can see, the loop of Henry naabot na siya sa medulla. So, kanina kita diri ang medulla. And then, of course, the cortical nephron, wala siya kaabot sa medulla, or if nakabot siya sa medulla, gamay lang, superficial, so cortical. Majority of the nephron is still within the cortex, alright? That's why it's called cortical nephron. And as you can see, ang collecting duct ears, no, sa una, gating ko na, ang collecting duct ear ay kay usara ka nephron ang mag-share. Actually, nag-have nephrons na pwedeng mo connect sa collecting duct, usa ka collecting duct. So, para sa picture, na ay usa ka nephron sa kilid, na another nephron sa kilid. So, pwedeng nag-have nephrons na mag-connect on the same collecting duct. O, di ba? Interesting. Alright. Now, again, the nephrons, basically, the main or the basic composition niya are the glomerulus and the renal tubules. Alright? So, again, nephrons, the functional unit of your kidneys. Alright. Okay, sige. Now, we go now to the order of urine formation. So, asa man siya magsugod una? Of course, mag-start siya sa glomerulus. Alright? Because filtration happens in glomerulus, followed by the PCT, the proximal convoluted tubule, followed by the loop of Henle, and then you have the distal convoluted tubule, and then you have the collecting ducts. Finally, you have the calyx, as we have mentioned, siyang mag-funnel, no, makuha sa imuhang urine, and then finally the renal pelvis, and then renal pelvis padulong na sa ureter, and then bladder. Alright, so mag-start siya sa glomerulus. So how do you remember that, dears? Pwede mo siya imagine, no? Glomerulus ang una, dito yung filtration. When you say proximal, meaning siya ang first. Alright? Siya ang nauna, pero hindi ang kailangan. Charot. So, again, proximal. Proximal, siya ang duol, una. Alright? So, after that, mo, loop of Henle sa siya. Meaning mo, lower sa siya. Alright? Loop of Henle, and then finally, distal, meaning layo. Alright? Distal convoluted tubule, and then finally, the collecting duct. Alright? So, that's the order of the tubules. And kung asa po mo agi, imuhang filtrate. Alright? Na mahimong urine. Alright? So, I hope na-get mo to siya. And then for renal functions, of course, we have 4 major renal functions. You have the renal blood flow, glomerular filtration, tubular reabsorption, and finally, tubular secretion. All right. Now, take note, CPCT, proximal convoluted, loop of Henle, your distal convoluted, and collecting duct, they all alter the urine concentration. So, after glomerulus, the remaining tubules, dito na mag-alter urine concentration mo. Kung sa'y ma-appeal sa urine, kung sa'y hindi ma-appeal sa urine. All right. And the ascending loop of Henle is highly impermeable to water. So that's sa tanang parts of nephron, ascending loop of Henle lang, dili makagawas ng water. Alright? So it's highly impermeable to water. Take note, as a ganit, ascending loop of Henle. Alright? So that's for the order of urine formation. Alright, okay. Now we go now to your renal blood flow. No? So before ka makaproduce of urine, kailangan na ay blood. Okay? Because if wala blood na mo ato sa kidneys, unsa man yang i-filter. So if wala siya i-filter, wala po'y urine na ma-produce, di ba? So kailangan dyan na ay blood na mo ato sa imong kidneys. And that is through the process of your renal blood flow. So blood, as a mag-start, coming from, of course, the artery. No? Renal artery, musulod siya, alright, sa imong kidneys, and then will branch siya into smaller capillaries, alright? Starting first with the afferent arteriole, and this afferent arteriole is connected to your glomerulus, alright? And this glomerulus, na siya mugawas na arteriole, which is known as the efferent arteriole. So when you say afferent, siya ang nagdala pasulod, alright? Afferent, alright? Padulong, no? Pasulod. Ang efferent, pagawas, alright? So from the glomerulus, iyahang dalo ng blood from the glomerulus to the next capillary. So afferent, glomerulus, efferent, and then finally, you have the peritubular capillaries. So when we say peritubular capillaries, nag-surround sila sa imong tubules, no? Peritubular, peri, around, tubular, no? The capillaries are surrounding the tubules, all right? And then lastly, the vasa recta, which is padulong na sa venous circulation, and then finally, renal vein, then pabalik na sa heart, all right? So inana iya ang flow, all right? So artery, then you have afferent arteriole, glomerulus, efferent, then you have the peritubular capillaries, meaning mo travel na siya around the tubules, okay? Peritubular, again, capillaries are surrounding, okay, the tubules. And then finally, you have the vasa recta, and then balik na to the renal vein, and then balik sa heart, alright? So important, because again, if walay blood flow, walay urine na mag-form. Kaya unsa man ang i-filter sa mga kidneys, alright? Now again, renal blood flow, say normal, it's about 1,200 ml per minute. So about 1,200 ml of blood per minute is being supplied to the kidneys, alright? And the renal plasma flow is 600 to 700 ml per minute. So take note of that here. So basta blood flow gani, mas dako gyud value. Kay blood na, tanan-tanan na gyud. So 1,200 ml per minute. And for renal plasma, ang plasma ra, 600 to 700 ml per minute. And pila ka percent daw of the blood pumped by the heart ang muadto sa kidney? About 20 to 25%. So ang nasa passenger is 25. So if pangutanan mo what is the percentage, that is 25. Answer 25%. Alright? So this is known as the cardiac output, meaning that is the percent of blood na ginapump sa heart na muadto sa kidneys. Pila ka percent? 25% of the blood pumped by the heart goes to the kidneys. So bahalag kidney, bahalag unsa kadaghan or unsa kagamay ang kidneys or whatever, dako jud na amount of blood ang mosulod. Because again, remember that the blood should be filtered, it should be clean, so that's why about 25%. Alright? 25% of the blood pumped by the heart goes into the kidneys. Okay? Alright, so that's for the renal blood flow. Again, starts with the artery, renal artery, tapos afferent, meaning siya ang magpasulod, padulong sa glomerulus. And after niya sa glomerulus, mubalik na siya or mugawas na siya through the efferent arteriole, ayan, efferent, and then kani siya mga blue deridiers, muna siya peritubular capillaries. When you say peritubular, again, surrounding, no? Surrounding the tubules. All right. And then after the peritubular, the vasa recta, padulong na sa renal vein, and then back to the heart. So that's the renal blood flow. And again, what's the question? How much of the cardiac output is supplied to the kidneys? Pila ka percent? Pila ka percent? You have 25. Take note of that. Kung pangutanan mo, 25. Alright. Bahalag na ay 20 dito. Ang answer na to, 25. Okay, ang Strassinger na yung na 25. And I think Brunzel to 25. Okay, so the kind of references na gingo. Ang graphs ang nag-ingo na 20 to 25. Alright? So again, if ang choices, sa ating answer, 25. Okay. Alright, sige. Okay, so we start first with the second function, which is your glomerular filtration. Alright, so okay pa mo dear? Nandiyan pa ba kayo? Okay pa? Or yes, carry pa? Any questions so far?
Carry pa, sir.
Carry na lang. Sige, laban ta. Alright, so next, of course, gikan sa imuhang renal artery, di ba? We mentioned, ang blood mo agi sa asaman, afferent arteriole. And the afferent arteriole will supply the blood padulong sa glomerulus. Now, in the glomerulus, this is where filtration happens. Your glomerulus, again, as mentioned here, it's a coil, no? It's a tuft, meaning kumpul-kumpul siya, coil of capillaries. And in these capillaries, this is where filtration happens. All right. Now, your glomerulus or this tuft of capillaries is enclosed by a structure known as the Bowman's capsule or Bowman's or renal corpuscle. So, Bowman's capsule again or renal corpuscle. All right. So, renal corpuscle. Corpuscle. Okay, so renal corpuscle or your Bowman's capsule. Okay, now as you can see, your glomerulus, it serves as or resembles a sieve. What do you mean by sieve? Brush up strainer. Okay, because ang gina-filter is non-selective, meaning bisag kinsa, alright, pwede mo gawas, alright, or pwede siyang ma-filter, pwede nang lumabas, ganun. So pwede na siyang ma-filter, bahala kinsa pa na siya, as long as ma-qualify na niya ang requirements na it should be less than 70,000 daltons iyahang weight. Alright? According to graphs, less than 50,000. Pero again, if pangutanan mo sa answer, less than 70,000. So if you are a solute or a substance na less than 70,000 imong weight, then pwede na ka ma-filter. So it's non-selective. Okay? Non-selective. That's why brush up strainer. Diba? If mag-strain ka, wala bisag kinsay pwedeng mo gawas or kinsay pwedeng ma-strain. As long as katong weight niya ay less than, again, 70,000 daltons. Alright? So that's the function of your glomerulus, no? Non-selective filtration yun. So ma-filter yun niya imuhang mga solutes, except for the larger materials or larger substances na nasa imong blood. Your blood cells, of course, your high molecular weight na mga proteins, and other mga substances na dagpo. Of course, dili sila kagawas. Alright. Now, another structure found in the glomerulus are the podocytes. These podocytes are actually part of the Bowman's capsule, meaning it's the Bowman's capsule na mga cells. Alright. And these podocytes, they have what we call mga foot-like processes. Alright. And these foot-like processes, they form what we call the filtration slip. So meaning, as you can see sa picture, na yung mga buslot-buslot, di ba? So, pwedeng makaagi dira makaagi imong mga solutes na gina-filter. Okay? So, that's the function of your podocytes. And aside from that, the area of your glomerulus, they have a negative, overall negative charge, and that is known as the shield of negativity. And this shield of negativity is very important because if we don't have this, your proteins, such as albumin, will be filtered. Okay? Now, take note sa Strassinger dears. We mentioned dito sa 6th edition, where the typo is Strassinger. Albumin is positively charged. Okay, if you can read, if mubasa mo, albumin is positively charged. Now take note, where the typo is Strassinger, because albumin is negatively charged. Okay, and because negatively charged albumin, the shield of negativity is also negative. And diba, as we have already known, like charges repel. Because of these different or same charges, dili siya ma-attract sa imuhang glomerulus, therefore dili siya ma-filter. So that's why it's very important na intact imuhang shield of negativity. No? Because later, sa mga diseases sa kidneys, we'll know, di ba, na ay disease dito, naguba ang shield of negativity, mugawas na mga lipids, mugawas na yung mga proteins sa mga urine because of the disruption in the shield of negativity. Alright? So that's for the glomerulus. Alright? So what you have to remember lang yun, it's non-selective yung pag-filter. Meaning, kung imuhang size kay less than 70,000 na yun, pwede lang ka makagawas, no? Pwede lang ka ma-filter. Alright? Okay. Now again, pila ka ml of plasma is filtered? About 120 ml per minute. So, about 120 ml or 1/5 of the total renal plasma flow ang ma-filter kada minute. So, 120 ml per minute. Kay Brunzel, it's about 125. So, mga na range, 120 to 125. And what is the SG of the fluid leaving the glomerulus? It's 1.010. So, take note of that. So, after glomerulus, meaning kaning nakuha na fluid diri padulong na sa proximal convoluted tubule, iyahang SG is about 1.010. Ang iyahang osmolality is about 300 milliosmoles. Okay, take note of that. Alright? Iyahang osmolality, the fluid leaving the glomerulus is about 300 milliosmol. Alright. Now, kani siya dears, dili pa siya urine. Okay, dili pa tawag ang fluid na nigawa sa glomerulus, dili pa urine. It's known as an ultrafiltrate. So when we say ultrafiltrate, it's basically a filtrate na medyo similar o composition sa imuhang plasma. Pero ang difference lang is wala itong mga dagko na cells or mga dagko na substances such as your cells, such as your high molecular weight proteins. That's why it's called ultrafiltrate. Hindi kuha itong mga dagko, alright? Ang nabili na lang kaya itong mga gagmay. So, commercial intense na filtration. So, ultrafiltrate. Okay? So, ultrafiltrate of plasma. That's why you say urine is an ultrafiltrate of plasma. Because, in a way, ang composition sa urine, same sa composition sa plasma. Alright? Pero, the difference lang is wala itong mga dagko na cells. The presence of these cells, the presence of these large substances could indicate renal disease. Okay? Alright. So, that's for glomerular filtration. Again, what you have to remember lang, glomerulus, non-selective filter. Kung saan gina-filter, substances less than 70,000 Daltons. Alright? Okay? So that's for your glomerulus. Alright? Glomerular filtration. And according to, I think, Brunzel na siya, glomerular filtration rate, kaya na siya years, it's used to monitor kidney disease progression and glomerular filtration rate. No? So monitor kidney disease progression. Alright, so that's for your glomerulus. Alright. Now take note, your glomerulus bears, na yung shape sa glomerulus na yung honey, alright, or nephron, ang imong distal convoluted tubule here, okay, mutakot siya or mumit siya sa imong afferent arteriole. And this is known as the juxtaglomerular apparatus. Alright? And this juxtaglomerular apparatus is very important sa atong discussion sa sunod. Alright? The next slide. Because this juxtaglomerular apparatus, siya ang produce sa imuhang renin. Okay? So renin is produced by your juxtaglomerular apparatus. And asa na siya important sa pag-regulate sa imuhang blood pressure and fluid volume. So that's our discussion next, di ba? Ayan. So we're going to discuss now your ADH. No, again, your antidiuretic hormone, all right, also known as your arginine vasopressin. It's a may nag-release ani here sa ADH. Let's see, Enjo ninyo, kamusta man? It's a may nag-release ani ang ADH.
Anterior pituitary.
Ano sa to? Boss?
Anterior pituitary.
Okay. Anterior or posterior? Ano naman? Dito may nag-release sa ADH or arginine vasopressin. Hala, yes. Ano ba circular? Circular nga. Dito may nag-release sa mong ADH or arginine vasopressin. Yes, hello. Nandiyan mo pa kayo? Dito man, nag-release.
Hi po, sir. Hi po. Ay,
It's after
Anterior.
kasi nag-release. Dili kasi nag-produce.
Ay.
Anterior, sir.
Ano sa?
Anterior.
Anterior. Okay. Anterior. Ito man anterior. Anterior. Sa man.
Pituitary.
Okay. Anterior pituitary gland. Alright. Eldrick ka ba ito? Nag-answer. Tama.
Si Bastet to, sir.
Sure ka? Okay. Anterior pituitary. Sige. Nailang mo answer. Hala, yes. Wala na. Isa man. Isa na.
Agree.
Mansa.
Wala, sir.
So, si anterior ba? Sabi ni Baste. Tama ba? Anterior?
Posterior.
Hypothalamus.
Or what if ano rin? Thyroid gland. Ala, madugay man tayo. Again, take note, your ADH is produced by, or released by the posterior pituitary gland, or also known as, it's the other name, the posterior pituitary gland.
Neurophysis.
Neurohypophysis. Very good. All right, take note of that. Take note how ADH is released by your posterior, but ang nag-produce niya is tama, hypothalamus. No, the ADH is only stored in your posterior pituitary gland. Very good. Okay, now take note, what is the main function of ADH? It's for water absorption. So ADH talaga, iyahang goal is for water absorption. And kinsa na tubules iyahang gina-act on? It's the collecting tubules in your DCT. Primarily good here's the collecting ducts. So, ang imong body, of course, mag-rely siya on the body's state of hydration. If makabantay siya na gamay na imong tubig, so may buhaton niya, of course, mo-release siya o ADH. Because the ADH will conserve water for the body. Yes? So, if gamay na kang tubig, you're dehydrated, of course, imong lawas tears, hindi na siya bugo. Alright? Ang iyong buhaton, alam na naman, mag-release pa siya ng water. Nakabalo na siya, gamay na ganit kang tubig, mag-release pa siya ng water. No. What it does is, mag-produce ang ADH para ma-retain ang water. Alright? Because gamay makang tubig. In contrast, if you have much water, if you're too much hydrated, no, then of course ADH will be decreased in production para your water will be released. Okay, to decrease the water inside your body. Alright, so diba, negative feedback mechanism and the MF, ganun. Alright, so I hope na-gets lang to. But always take note lang that the main function of ADH is for water conservation. Alright, now in contrast, you also have your aldosterone. Okay, so aldosterone, kani siya, it's a may nag-produce aning aldosterone.
Adrenal cortex.
Ayan, very good. Ang bilis, very good. That's the adrenal glands. Very good. All right. Now, aldosterone, yung main function is to regulate sodium reabsorption. So, similar yapon, no? Kung ADH kay water, ang aldosterone is for sodium reabsorption. And take note, dears, if naganing sodium, follow yun ang water. All right? So, water follows salt. So, meaning, if mo reabsorb ka ang sodium, water will follow. Alright? So, para mabalance ang osmotic gradient and all that. Alright? So, water follows salt. Okay? Take note of that. Alright? Now, also managing RAAS, no? The renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Your RAAS is activated whenever you have low blood pressure or low blood volume and also low blood volume and low blood pressure. Alright? Because you have low blood volume, you also have low sodium. Alright? Now, once this is, muna siya nahitabo, alright? Kung inanay nahitabo, the brain, alright, will signal the juxtaglomerular apparatus to produce renin. Your renin will convert angiotensinogen, which is produced by the liver, to angiotensin 1. But your angiotensin 1 is inactive, alright? This angiotensin 1 will travel to the lungs para ma-convert siya sa imuhang ACE, your angiotensin converting enzyme. And this enzyme will convert angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2, which is the more active form. And this angiotensin 2 siya na mo produce different effects para mapataas ang blood pressure. And what are these effects? Iyahang i-release ang aldosterone and ADH for water and sodium reabsorption. Remember that you have low blood volume. So for you to increase blood volume, you have to conserve water. And as I mentioned, if na water, mo follow po na salt. All right? And this will now increase your blood pressure. Next, you have vasoconstriction of the efferent and vasodilation of the afferent to increase your blood pressure. Okay, tama. Because again, take note na para ma-constrict, pag constrict mo sa imong blood vessel, of course, that will increase your blood pressure. And number 3, it corrects renal blood flow. If medyo low yung blood pressure, your body will divert the rest of your blood or majority of your blood padulong sa other bodies, other organs na medyo kailangan. Alright? So, to divert the blood flow. Alright? So, those are the effects of your angiotensin 2. Alright? So, take note of that. Again, ultimately, kung sa ilahang result, increase in blood pressure and increase in your blood volume. Alright? So, here's another diagram. Ayan. Again, dehydration, sodium deficiency, decrease in blood volume or decrease in blood pressure. You have again the juxtaglomerular renin, angiotensin 2, and again, ang sayahang result, the vasoconstriction of arterioles, which will lead to increase in blood pressure. Remember, diba, if constricted yung blood vessels, that will increase blood pressure. All right? Ayan. And then, of course, it will lead to the release of aldosterone to increase blood volume also, because it will increase sodium reabsorption. And if there is sodium reabsorption, diba, as mentioned, water follows salt. So water will also be reabsorbed, which will lead to the increase in blood volume and ultimately increase in blood pressure. If mas daghan kang blood volume, dears, mas intense ang pressure to maintain this blood volume. That's why to increase mo ang blood volume, increase po rin mo ang blood pressure. Alright? That is why if na may mga relatives, no, na may mga parents na hypertensive, one of the drugs na anti-hypertensive, gina-target ang ACE, di ba? The angiotensin converting enzyme. Gina-target nila. Because again, the ACE, the enzyme, is needed for conversion of angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. So if yung mga ACE na block na siya, the angiotensin 1 will not be converted to angiotensin 2. So angiotensin 2 will not produce the effects. So, di ba? That's what we need or muna kailangan sa mga hypertensive. Alright, now take note kanina as dears, it will be stimulated again. Ang kidneys na mag-matter, mag-monitor kung nabay changes in blood volume, nabay changes in salt concentration in anak. So kung naay mga changes in anak, the RAAS will be activated. So bisag kanus na day, no? Kung naay mga differences, ma-activate yun siya. So sa mga hypertensive patients, no, one of the targets is your ACE enzyme. So mga nalimut ko sa mga tao. Anyway, ayan, so that's for the ACE, no, the RAAS, renin-angiotensin aldosterone system. That's why also, if you are hypertensive, diba, it's recommended that your diet should not be high in salt. Because if taas ang salt content, diba, as mentioned, kung taas ang salt, taas po ang water reabsorption. And once taas ang water, it will lead to increased blood volume. And when you say increased blood volume, it will also increase your blood pressure. Alright, so that's why dapat low salt content or low salt diet ang mga patients with hypertension. Alright, so that's for the RAAS. Again, it's found in the juxtamedullary apparatus between the afferent arteriole and the glomerulus. Alright, ayan, sige, that's for the RAAS. Actually, there's no very complicated endo, promise. As in, sa clin chem, very, daghan kayo siyang kailangan i-think about. Daghan kayo siyang i-process, no? Ang endo of electrolytes, kana yun ang topics sa clin chem. Very, I don't like anything yan. Sige. That's for the RAAS. Take note of that. Okay, sige. Now, we go to the next function, which is your tubular reabsorption. Now, of course, diba, we say, diba, dears, sa glomerular filtration, non-selective ang pag-filter. So, meaning, bahalag kinsa, diba, bahalag kinsa as long as less than 70,000 Daltons siya, ma-appeal siya sa imuhang filtrate, padulong sa urine. Now, of course, in those substances, there are still a lot of substances na kailangan pa sa body. And that is where tubular reabsorption happens. We need those, no, precious na mga substances that we need to function. That's why we need to reabsorb them. Because sa pag-filter pa lang daan sa glomerulus, wala siya nag-screen, in a way. Basta less than 70,000 Dalton ka, mapa-important maka na substance or dili, ma-appeal ka sa filtrate. Ayan. Pero if dako na yung weight, no, 70,000 Daltons and above na ka, di na siya maka-appeal sa filtration. Okay? So, again, as mentioned, kung less than 70,000 yung size, alright, bahalang important ka na substance or dili, mugawas yun ka, ma-appeal yun ka sa imuhang, ma-appeal yun ka sa filtrate. Now, these substances, of course, our body knows na important na siya. So we need to reabsorb them. That's the process of tubular reabsorption. And this process is considered to be the first function to be affected in renal disease. All right? Kaya medyo complicated ang imong tubular reabsorption here. So kung na changes in your kidney function, siya gid unay maapektuhan. Kaya daghang mechanisms na involved niya. All right? So first function to be affected in renal disease. And we also have what we call the threshold substances. So take note of this, dear ha. Threshold substances, these are substances that are normally reabsorbed, okay, completely reabsorbed by the renal tubules when their concentration in the plasma is within normal limits. So example, you have glucose, sodium chloride, amino acids, potassium, creatine, and ascorbic acid. So take note of that, dear. Speaker niya sa Brunzel or sa graphs. Basta ni-ask sa boards niyo po or sa exam. Which of the following is not a threshold substance? So again, take note, threshold substances, these are substances that are normally reabsorbed if their concentration in the plasma is within normal limits. So dili na masunod ang concept sa renal threshold, alright? And when we say renal threshold, this is the limit kung asa na siya kuto ang imuhang tubule na mo reabsorb. So example, for glucose, it's about 160 to 180 mg per dl. So if it's greater than 180 na dears, will appear na ang glucose sa urine because it has already saturated, no? Too much na kaayo ang glucose sa tubule for it to be reabsorbed. Okay? That's known as the renal threshold. Nilapaw na siya, no? Nilapaw na siya sa iyang maximum reabsorptive capacity. Alright? Na-saturate na kaayo glucose if it's more than 180. So bahala ng tubule, ganahan pa siya mo reabsorb ani, makayo naman siya na it's too much. No, I have to let you go. Drama! Oh my God! All too well. Play, Alexa, play all too well. So if it's too much na gani, dears, you have to let go. Kung too much na gani, bitawan mo na. Because sometimes, holding on does more damage than letting go. Oh! Yes, naman. Tama, di ba? Can I get an amen? Tama, di ba? Holding on does more damage than letting go. Tama. Right? If masika hold on kay usik mo ang years na mo sir, usik mo ang time na mo hang i-allocate for each other and then magbulag rin sayang kaayo. But at what cost? Your abuse, no, your gaslighting. You are you are very much not in a good headspace every time na mo. So what does it bring you? Diba? Nothing. So let them go. Go too much. Alright? Kung sobra na galing sa inyo ang maximum reabsorptive capacity, if too much na sa inyo renal threshold, let go na yan. Okay? Alright. Na-insert yun ako ang hugot, no? But anyway, I hope na-get you na siya. So that's the point, no? Of renal threshold. Now, where does this reabsorption happen? It's primarily happening in the proximal convoluted tubule. But anywhere in the nephron gears after the glomerulus, na ay mga reabsorption na ito. So tubular reabsorption occurs throughout the nephron after glomerulus, all right? But the main site is your proximal convoluted tubule, all right? So now may drawing there. Sige. So paki-write na sa tunga there. Salts, water, amino acids, glucose, and urea. Sa to ang mnemonics, swag U. Swag U. Okay, swag U. Sige. So ito na siyang drawing na para mag-gets ninyo. Okay. Sabay na amen. Amen. Yes, amen. Here's know your worth yun. I learned it the hard way, pero know your worth. Promise. Murag 9 times, murag makain ko na, Lord, na kung ipagin mo ano na kasakit or what. Pero murag na po yung positive side ko it in a way na murag, at least I learned, no? Kaysa naman na murag, grabe na yun. Kaysa naman na murag ka na ganyan, murag, wala ko na experience ato. So, remember lang na all the pains and all the hurt that you have experienced accumulated man ganin our healing. It will really help you in the future to know kung sa dyan mong ganaan sa healing. And you'll know what are your non-negotiables and kung kano sa dyan ka, yung mga red flags na pag-una ka. So the moment makakita ka red flag or non-negotiable in your next partner or future partner, then you know na kailangan na kamuli agad-agad. O, di ba? Wow, lahiragin natin mga chika drink damita, ano pa, alas 4. Pasensya, dears, may mga pinagdadaanan, joke lang. Alright, check out na I'm in a completely fine state in terms of love life. Wala ko nagmakoy in terms of that. Okay, basta makayo mo na, sir. Si Sir Marcin kamakoy, like, isa lang ko ba sakit na niya. Pwede bang delete about lucky day mo yan? Pwede about life in general? Wala akong chika dear, so, when you reach after graduation, okay, since mo work naman mo as a professional, you'll realize na ang makoy is about love life. It's much easier to handle compared sa makoys when it comes to life in general. Like in terms of adulting, in terms of handling your finances, in terms of your responsibilities, mas intense siya na makoy compared to love life. Kasi, promise, like, there's so much more to it. Kaya wala naman kumakain ko dito na moral. Ako makoy sa love life, makabalo ang buko na, it will end. Na ganit. Like, pain is temporary. Okay, sige, gahinan ako oras, mga 1 month para magmawag ni someone. And then after that, I'll be fine. But when it comes to makoy sa life, mga good, it's kanang recurring, no? Intermittent. Sige siya balik-balik. Okay. Depende na siya sa imong state and sa mga. So, as much as possible, when you are still in school, enjoy it. Okay? Ayaw sa mong stress na like, makayo mo na, ginahan ako graduate, kinanay kwarta. Yes, kinanay kwarta. But if you are not privileged enough, like if you don't have generational wealth like others do, lisod kayo siya. Alright? To balance everything. So, ako advice as for now, na ako sa school, enjoy. So, niya na enjoy na good. No? Enjoy lang na inyong problema pa lang kayo sa pagpasar. And sa pag-exam. No? Kaninyo ka mga grades and all. Okay, when it comes to a life na good adult, this would be alright? But, we'll get through this. Laban lang din natin what I chose. Okay? Because in the end, mga matay ka, punta na joke. Bitaw, chika lang ka siya, no? Para at least, meron kayo ma-share lunch. Okay? Para di po kayo kasi your CP. Alright, so again, balik ka sa drawing. So, again, sidetrack tayo. Okay. So, ito nga, against Wagyu, you have salts, followed by water. You have amino acids, you have glucose, and then you have urea. So this is a tubule, no? That's a tubule. So kung sila tanan, gikan siya sa, oh my God, the light is coming. Pero yan na, you're saying. Kanina kita here, dire. Makita na dire, or asa na dire. Kato ako giray, ako may suka. Dire na lang. So, so you have salts, again, water, amino acids, Wagyu, you have glucose, and you have urea. So again, this is the nasa tubule. Okay, as we have mentioned, sa glomerulus, wait. Yeah. So pag sa glomerulus, diba? When you say glomerulus, pag sa glomerulus, diba, it's non-selective filtration. So therefore, tanan yun, no? Basta less than 70,000, ma-filter siya sa filtrate. So sa tubule ni siya. So di ba natin blood? Oh my God. And urine. Okay. So dala ito nag-arrow. Okay. Salts primarily sodium. So this will be absorbed if in the presence of increased aldosterone. Alright? So mabalik si salts. Seawater, of course, in the presence of a hormone, ADH. So increase ang ADH, water is also reabsorbed. Your amino acids, dears, very important amino acids. These are 100%. 100% na sila reabsorbed. So balik na siya diri. Your glucose is reabsorbed if, saan ito itong i-mention? If you have renal threshold lang is less than 180. So, balik siya dito. And your urea is also reabsorbed 40% lang. Alright? So, reabsorb siya at 40%. Okay? Because urea, dears, is a metabolic waste. Alright? Kung makating mo na, sir, waste man siya, ano siya po siya reabsorb? The body still uses it in some other functions. And your urea, my good, is can passively be reabsorbed. Meaning, pwede na siyang mo reabsorb urea. Okay? Ayan, kahit di natin gusto siya. Okay. Tapos sa urine, so sa urine, erase sa here sa, naka-gets ra, nakapila, okay, taro ba? Is it fat? Taro lang. Okay. Alright, sige. And then, so again, salts, reabsorb, it increase ang aldosterone. You have water, increase ADH, also reabsorb. Amino acids, which are very important for protein building and all that, it's 100% reabsorbed. And you have glucose, if less than 180, iyahang mg per dl, di ba? Wala na siya nilapaw sa renal threshold, it's reabsorbed. And urea is, of course, 40% reabsorbed. Alright, so sa mnemonics, swag U. Alright, swag U. Okay, tapos you have the urine portion, or sa erase. Okay, so sa urine portion is actually opposite lang. So we have swag U, di ako nakibutan lahat, swag U. So sa urine, sa may tabo. So of course, ang salts, mabutang sa urine, decrease ang aldosterone. Water will go to the urine, of course, it decrease ang ADH. Amino acids, wala na siya sa urine because it's 100% reabsorbed. Your glucose again appears in urine if greater than 180 na iyahang renal threshold, iyahang concentration. So glucose appears there, and urea 60% is secreted to the urine. So wala na lang is of course amino acids because your amino acids are very important. No, we need that for building proteins and all that. So that's why it's completely reabsorbed. Okay, so muna siya drawing na here sa, I hope na-get na ito. Ito yung mga arrow. Kung naklaro na, oh my gosh. Okay, I think naklaro na. Okay, na-get siya dears? Okay lang? Na-copy lang? Or, sure, wala. Charot. Any? Carry lang? Okay, thank you. Alright, so we continue, no? Now for tubular reabsorption, take note here. We have two major ways, no? Mechanisms to reabsorb these substances. It could be passive or active transport. Now, of course, basic no biology, so gasgas na gasgas sukat pa first year. No? Again, when you see active transport, it uses energy. No, it uses ATP. So it usually uses pwedeng muagi siya against a gradient, meaning against a gradient, there's a difference between concentration or there's a difference between charges. So if you have to fight against that, you need energy. All right, so active transport. And for passive transport, passive lang, no, along a gradient. Now go with the flow siya. It doesn't need any energy. All right, so it's movement by diffusion because of a gradient, or it moves along a gradient. Nagpa-flow na siya. Nag-go with the flow na siya. So it doesn't need energy. Now take note, isa ito mga mucos, kailangan ng active transport, isa ito kailangan ng passive transport. Now you may be asking, sir, nalagay ba na like sodium na yung active, na po yung passive? Depende siya sa location sa inyong nephron. So for sodium, as you can see, active transport siya sa proximal convoluted and distal convoluted. And for sodium, passive transport to sodium pag-abot sa ascending loop of Henry. Alright, so take note of that. So that's for tubular reabsorption. Take note ha, kinsa itong mga active, kinsa itong passive. And asa sila gina-reabsorb. Yung mga location. Alright? Okay, sige, that's for tubular reabsorption. Alright, now again, here's a diagram of the different substances na gina-reabsorb. Take note sa PCT, as you can see, daghan kayo here, no? That's why we said that the major site of reabsorption happens in the proximal convoluted tubule. So as you can see, everywhere in the body, no? Everywhere in the nephron, after glomerulus, reabsorption happens. As you can see, sa leukocandy, sa imong distal convoluted, gyapon, collecting ducts, alright? But take note sa collecting ducts and distal convoluted tubule, it's more on water na lang. Water na lang ilang gina-change or gina-reabsorb. It's either mo reabsorb sa water or dili. So water na lang dito nakita. But other solutes, wala na kayo. Alright? It's more on water na lang. Alright, sige. Now, here's a diagram of the leukocandy here. As we have mentioned, diba, from the PCT or from the glomerulus, iyahang osmolality is about 300 milliosmol. Ayan, as you can see. Diba? 300 milliosmol. Now, take note sa leukocandy, descending leukocandy, water is permeable. Alright? So, water, constant ra pag gawa sa water. And kaning surrounding area, dears, sa medulla na siya. Diba? Take note that the loop of Henle maabot siya sa medulla. Alright. Now sa medulla, as you can see, the medulla is very high in concentration. Hypertonic siya or hyperosmotic. Okay? Now the water will go out. Alright? So therefore, mugamay ang water diri, mugamay ang water sa sulod, so therefore, mas magka-concentrated siya. So as you can see, gabante mga numbers, nagka-dako. Alright? Diba? 300, 500, 700, 900, 1,100, and then finally, sa pinaka-deepest yun, pinaka-lower or lowest end sa imuhang loop of Henle, dira siya pinaka-hyperosmotic. Nabot siya 1,200. And that is the maximum yun. Alright? That is the maximum hyperosmolality or osmolality na level sa imuhang medulla and sa loop of Henle. So 1,200 milliosmol. But as you can see, dears, pag saka niya sa ascending loop of Henle, medyo gamay na iyang concentration. Why? Because remember that the ascending loop of Henle, dira na mo gawas ang sodium. Alright? So as you can see, nagsugod na gawas ang sodium passively. Alright? So therefore, lowering down the concentration. So as you can see, pag abot niya sa collecting duct, padulong na sa distal convoluted tubule di ay, medyo less na iyahang osmolality. Because again, remember that sa Didactics, nagawas na siya mga sodium, nagawas siya sa mga sodium and chloride. Alright? So therefore, medyo na-even out ang concentration, wala na kayo siya concentrated. And this procedure or this flow is known as the countercurrent mechanism. As you can see, opposite, no? Opposite ang paggawa sa water or opposite ang concentration. Medyo magka-taas siya din napita sa imuhang descending lip and then mugamay siya sa taas. So countercurrent, no? Opposite. Iya ang flow. Alright? So that's for the loop of Henle. So ang loop of Henle, dira medyo start to concentrate imuhang urine. Diba? So you can see, nanggawas na ang mga kailangan magawas. Alright? And then, nag-start na po na ma-concentrate imuhang filtrate. Alright? So again, your loop of Henle, this is where the start of concentration of your urine or filtrate. Alright? So that's for the loop of Henle and tubular reabsorption. And of course, the last function is your tubular secretion. Now take note, after nasa loop of Henle, padulong na siya sa DCT and collecting tubule, imuhang filtrate. Alright. Now of course, in the blood, we have substances na wala siya na filter sa glomerulus. Because these substances again could be big or they could be attached to plasma proteins. And once they are attached to plasma proteins, dili sila kagawas sa glomerulus. But these substances are harmful to the body, such as mga drugs, no? Metabolites of drugs and other na mga metabolic waste, such as creatinine. So how do we remove this? It's through tubular secretion. So once katusulan na substances, maabot na dapit sa DCT or other tubules, they will have an affinity to the tubules there. So what happens, mo-dissociate sila sa protein, alright? And by active transport ba or other mechanism, mugawas na sila sa tubules, padulong na sa filtrate, alright? And that is the function of your tubular secretion. It's for elimination of the wastes, alright? Or elimination of toxic substances na wala na eliminate sa glomerulus or wala na filter sa glomerulus, alright? So another function niya is to regulate acid-base balance because it is here that your sodium, hydrogen ions or ammonium ions are released. Okay, so that's the main function of tubular secretion. So then ako drawing, so very easy na lang siya here. So again, blood, urine, and blood tubule, and then you have urine. Okay, so diba you have the waste sa tubule. Of course, ang araw na ana is padulong din because the wastes are coming from your blood. Alright? And of course, urine padulong na sa, ang waste padulong na sa urine. Now you have 2 H plus there. Alright. Now take note that ang H plus, wait lang, let me check. Tama. Alright. Now H plus, to maintain your acid-base balance, one of the ways para ma-maintain ang acid-base balance, your H plus from the blood is secreted by the kidneys to the tubules. And your H plus will also be released to your urine. Okay? Ayan. But there are cases in which you have high H plus here, so therefore you have low pH. You are acidotic. Okay? You are acidotic. Okay? So you produce H plus sa tubule. But na instances na disease dito, na imong tubule dili siya ka-release of H plus sa imong urine. So ang imong H plus here sa tubule, kaya mo increase lang padayon, pero dili siya ma-release sa urine. And that disease is known as the renal tubular acidosis. Why? So you may be thinking, sir, renal tubular acidosis, pero ano iyang ihi? Wala ka H plus. That's the point. Guba iyang renal tubules. Dili niya ma-release ang H plus na nasa iyang tubules sa urine. Therefore, ma-concentrate siya sa tubules. Magka-acidosis sa imuhang renal tubules. Gets? Your body is experiencing acidosis, pero your urine is still alkaline. Why? There is a defect. There's a defect. Guba iyang pag-release of H plus sa urine. So that's renal tubular acidosis. So there's alkaline urine in the face of acidosis. Alright? So take note dear side, don't be confused. Kasi makayon mo na, ay okay, acidosis, renal tubular acidosis, agad-agad, acidic ang urine. Dili. In this case, alkaline urine, renal tubular acidosis. Why? Because the renal tubules have a defect. Dili nila ma-release ang H plus ions padulong sa imuhang urine. That's why magka-renal tubular acidosis. Ma-concentrate ang H plus, mga acids, di ba? Sa imuhang tubule, that's why acidosis. Alright? Dili ma-produce sa urine, that's why your urine is still alkaline. So take note, my question, what your urine in patients with renal tubular acidosis has a pH of, or say description sa urine of patients with renal tubular acidosis, it is alkaline. Okay. Gawa ko siguro. Ako na po yung nagtubag sa question. Pero sige lang. Okay, so again, renal tubular acidosis. Kung sa ihi, sa patient with renal tubular acidosis, it's, okay, going once.
Alkaline.
Alkaline. All right, take note. Why? Because again, the H plus and the tubules were not released into urine. Kaya guba imuhang tubules. There could be a defect in your hydrogen ionization, in your ammonia production, or bicarbonate reabsorption. All in all, contributing to the acidosis in your tubule. All right? Okay. Now, for your kidneys or for tubules, they have three main mechanisms how they maintain acid-base balance. Number one is for bicarbonate reabsorption. So here is a picture or a diagram. Ako lang illustrate. So ang diagram starts as a HCO3, which is your bicarbonate. So your bicarbonate is filtered from the food that you eat, from the substances that you intake. So your HCO3 in the by the power of carbonic anhydrase, your Ca, carbonic anhydrase, you have to combine ang HCO3 with H plus produced by the renal tubular cells to produce carbonic acid. But this carbonic acid, dears, is a irreversible na chemical reaction. So pwede na siya mabungkag balik to H2O and CO2. Now this H2O and CO2 will be reabsorbed by the renal tubular cells, and in the power or by the function yapon of the enzyme Ca, may mo yapon siyang carbonic acid. It's still the same because your carbonic acid or condition reaction is irreversible. Pwede na siyang mabungkag agad-agad. Your carbonic acid will become H plus balik and your HCO3 again. And this H plus will be recycled na po following the cycle, and this HCO3 will be reabsorbed. Because your HCO3, dears, is very important. Your kidneys, as much as possible, reabsorb ang bicarbonate. Because again, to maintain acid-base balance. All right, that's the first mechanism through bicarbonate reabsorption. Another one is through the phosphoric acid, mga phosphates. All right, ayan. So from the tubular lumen filtrate, your sodium, a disodium phosphate, actually siya Na2HPO4. All right. From the food that you eat, all right, it will combine to sodium. Now, this sodium disodium phosphate, phosphoric, basta. All right. Mag-dissociate mo sa sodium to produce monosodium phosphate, and it will now be excreted as your balik na po monosodium phosphoric acid. Tama ba? May ganun, sa basic yan, pasensya. Okay? And this will be secreted. Now, kanina dears, this is what we call the titratable acids, meaning, pwede silang ma-titrate. Alright? Katunggon, inyo ang ginagamit sa una sa chem lab, diba? Katong mga endpoint, katong color paint, inato, titration. Alright? And through titration, we can measure now the amount of acidity sa inyong urine. by detecting this, all right? Kanimuhang sodium, NaH2PO4. All right, okay, ayan. So that's for another mechanism, all right? It's through phosphoric acid and mga phosphates. Okay, all right. And the last is through ammonia, all right? Now we'll start here. Glutamine, which is an amino acid, all right? In the presence of glutaminase, the enzyme, it will become ammonia. Ammonia will be released, okay, and will combine with H plus produced by the renal tubular cells and will produce the ammonium ion. And this ammonium ion, NH4, will be found in the filtrate and will combine with the different salts na nasa filtrate such as your chloride and sulfate. And they will now produce your ammonium sulfate and ammonium chloride, which are mga neutral salts and excreted in the urine. So that's how they secrete H plus. Number one, it's through bicarbonate reabsorption. Okay, H plus is combined with bicarbonate, reabsorbed yapon siya. So you are reabsorbing base alkali bicarbonate. Next is through phosphoric acid and phosphates. No, the phosphates will combine with again your H plus and then secreted in urine. And lastly, through ammonia. Ammonia will combine with H plus produced with the renal tubular cells and will produce the ammonium ion. Ammonium ion will combine with the different salts found in your filtrate such as chloride and sulfate and now will be secreted in your urine. All right. So that's the different mechanisms of your tubular for maintaining acid-base balance. All right. So that's for tubular secretion. Again, take note lang, the main function is to eliminate wastes na wala na filter sa glomerulus and to maintain acid-base balance. All right. Okay. So that's for tubular secretion. And again, summary gapon, drawing, kung asa may tabo. Basta after filtration layers sa glomerulus, reabsorption and secretion happens throughout the nephron tube. All right? So reabsorption, secretion sa DCT, sa PCT, and sa collecting ducts. But take note sa collecting ducts layers, dili mahita po ang final concentration. All right? The final concentration of urine will happen in your collecting ducts. Because in the collecting ducts, dito na mag-matter ang water. Because your ADH, as we have mentioned, it will act on the collecting tubule, collecting ducts, no? And depending on the body state of hydration, depending on the need for water, and depending also on the concentration of the solutes, depending na sa collecting ducts kung mo reabsorb ba siya water or mo release po siya water. So dili na mo matter, no, ang concentration sa urine. It's in the collecting ducts. All right? Collecting ducts, the site of final concentration sa urine. So yung makabantay ang collecting ducts na ay medyo salty na siya or gamay na water ato ang human, kailangan ta mo reabsorb water. So mo reabsorb sila water in the presence of ADH, all right? So therefore, ang urine na ilang ma-produce is very concentrated. Whereas, if makaiman sa collecting ducts na ay okay na yung water, sige lang, mapagawa siya ng water. So therefore, ang ilang urine na ma-produce is diluted or dili kayo concentrated. Alright? So it's the collecting ducts here. Dito ang site of final concentration of urine. Alright? So that's for the overview lang here, ha? Dili siya itong in-depth yun na discussion. Mas medyo complex pa siya than this. Alright? Okay. So before I proceed to the renal function tests, any questions? Any clarification? Alright? Yes. I think may nag-raise their hand.
Sir, clarify lang po, sir. Ang ADH kaysa mo-act siya sa collecting ducts man, sir, no?
Yes. Collecting ducts and pwede po siya DCT, but mainly used sa collecting ducts.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Alright. Any questions, dears? No. Medyo challenging din dyan ang kidneys, dears, promise. So take care of your kidneys, ha? Take care of your kidneys. As in. Okay? Ayaw kay kabuswa yung kidneys. Maluwi mo. Okay? Alright. Ganyan kayo siya nahitabo. No? Nagtuon ko ang nilobili. Ano ko na? Dengan na din nahitabo, no, na igor matong ihi. Also, ang liver, ayaw kayo na sa man mo. Kaya mga kamuha, I'm sure. Charot. Ako po diyan. Charot. Drink in moderation. Okay? Be careful lang. Ayaw kayo sobrahin. Okay? Because in the long run, sa magulang na ta, dito na mo gawa sa mga effects. And this will kaayo. Alright? Your liver is very important. I'm sure, alam niyo na yan, ang daming functions ng liver. And also the kidneys. Alright? So, lisod na mag-dialysis na dahil, makita na sa SNMC sa dialysis ng mga sinasabi ko sa inyo. Alright? So, while we are still young, let us be healthy as much as possible. So, drink in moderation. Huwag naman palagi. Charot. Any questions here before we proceed to the last part na lang, mga renal function test? Okay. Alright, so we'll start first with the renal function tests, starting first with glomerular filtration. So sa mga tests ang mo-detect sa mga glomerular filtration, of course, clearance. Alright, now clearance tests, by the limits of clearance, it measures the amount of substance that is cleared or removed from the blood by the kidney. So therefore, if your kidneys are working properly, you're expected na iyang pag-clear sa usa ka substance na imong test is pas-pas or dako ang value, no? Kung imong glomerulus medyo guba na, no? Na nephron damage, of course, medyo less na iyang capability to filter, therefore medyo gamay na lang imong filtration rate. So ang atong gina-measure sa clearance test, theirs is your glomerular filtration rate, GFR. GFR. So for the clearance test, ayan, I'm sure you're familiar with this, na introduced na sa Clean Chem. So we have, of course, urea, the first, no, the earliest and the oldest. But the difference lang or the disadvantage of urea is that, remember that urea is reabsorbed, okay? And for a substance to be a good candidate for clearance test, it should never be reabsorbed nor secreted by the tubules. It should be at a constant level in your plasma, all right? And it should be stable for long periods of time, all right? So on disadvantage of urea, although it's the oldest and earliest, it is reabsorbed and secreted also by the tubules. Number two is your creatinine, all right? Very common. It's stable at a constant rate in your plasma. It's not reabsorbed because this is again a waste product from muscle metabolism. It's not secreted, pero medyo 7 to 10% secretion diay sa creatinine. Pero gamay lang naman, no? Pero at least it's endogenous. We have this, no? You have number three, inulin. Take note, it's a polymer of fructose. No, it's a fructopolysaccharide. So it's a polymer of fructose, considered to be the reference method or the gold standard. Pero ang disadvantage lang is because exogenous ni siya, kailangan i-attach ang patient with IV. So dili kayo siya convenient for the patient, no? But very important or very ideal ni siya na substance because it's not reabsorbed by the kidneys, it's not also secreted by the kidneys, it's completely eliminated also, and it's stable, all right? So very good siya. That's why siya ang reference method. But again, not all reference method, halag siya ang reference method, siya atong gamiton. Ay, okay. Because again, mumatter siya kung siya sa capabilities sa laboratory, sa needs of the hospital, and all that. It doesn't mean na kung siya yun ang gold standard, siya na ginagipang. Whoops! Charot. Okay. It doesn't mean kung siya una sa surveys, siya ka na. Yes! Cross fingers. Amen. Charot. Okay. Wednesdays, alam nila. Okay, number 4, your beta-2 macro, beta-2 micro na siya, beta-2 microglobulin, sorry. Beta-2 microglobulin also, take note, your beta-2 microglobulin is part, diba, of the MHC. Take note of that, diba? MHC, yung sa mga class 1 or class 2. Immunosero, kamusta tayo dyan? The major histocompatibility complex. Your beta-2 microglobulin is a part of the MHC. Alright? Kung sa mga class 1 or class 2. Alam, sir, may mga class pala yan. Sa mga class 1 or 2. Ala, yes. Kamusta? Sa mga class, ang imong beta-2 microglobulin. Asa mo siya ng MHC mabelong? Class 1 or class 2? Nako! Ano na? IF, kamusta tayo dyan? Wala na ako na-share sa akong lab. So. Sa lecture, yes. Ito man, beta-2 microglobulin. Asa mo siya? Class 1 or class 2 na MHC?
Class 1, sir.
Class 1, final answer? Alright, sige, para din ka magdugay. Yes, tama. Class 1 MHC, imuhang beta-2 microglobulin. Take note, your MHC, di ba? Or your human leukocyte antigen, these are found on the surface of your antigen-presenting cells. So sila ang in a way, present sa antigen, padulong sa imuhang mga T cells. No? Ang MHC class 1 is for CD8 T cells, and ang MHC class 2 is for CD4. Okay, take note of that. Alright, IS review. I'm sure nalimtan na. Alright, now beta-2 microglobulin, take note, theirs is found in all nucleated cells. So therefore, it is produced at a constant rate. Pero it's mostly determining, or it's better daw as a marker for tubular function, no? So kaysa glomerular function. So take note of that here sa aking random questions, of course. This is a marker for tubular integrity. Okay, atong answer is beta 2 microtubule. All right, basta a better marker for tubular function kaysa glomerular function sa to, beta 2 microtubule. All right. Next, of course, radioisotopes, which are of course exogenous pa rin. So radioisotopes na siya mga labeled na mga isotopes na radioactive, all right? And you have cystatin C. Cystatin C is also another good na substance. It's a low molecular weight protein, take note of that. And it's also produced by all nucleated cells. So it's produced by a constant rate, all right? But because these substances, your cystatin, beta 2, no, and urine, medyo kailangan pa siyang i-refine na may mga other methods na kailangan pang i-research, we then stick now with the most common, which is a creatinine clearance, because it's still being performed in a lot of labs also, and I think naka-experience mo ani sa inyong clinic, no? So creatinine clearance, of course, ang specimen na kailangan is the 24-hour urine. Diba? How do we collect 24-hour urine? The first urine na magawas, di sa natin collect, diba? Pero the succeeding urine until tomorrow, wala siya i-collect. So if mag-start at 8 a.m., karoon, we want to have 8 a.m. tomorrow. Alright? And I'm sure naka-experience na mo, di ba? Ang gigamit na kwarto sa wala kay absolute yun na katong 6 liters, may gamit na nakadala na kumikin siya. Wala na po, no? Okay. Then, kailangan siya i-rep, of course, sa yung pag-collect. Every collection mo, you have to put it in the refrigerator to minimize the destruction of your analyte. Alright. The creatinine clearance, of course, the general formula for clearance ng mga tests is, of course, urine na concentration over plasma concentration times the volume. So UV over P. That's the general, diba? UV over P. Alright? So that's the general formula. Clearance, diba? UV over P. Bahala kung sana substance. But take note, because your creatinine gears, it matters. Or matter ang mga bodies, no? Especially if female or male, because of muscle metabolism and also ethnicity food. That's why nasha correction with the body surface area. And the normal body surface area is 1.73 millimeters squared, all right? Over the area of the patient, all right? Now, the area of the patient, how do we determine that? It's through the nomogram or kanina formula here. So, take note na, wala na ko nakutanggira. But this is from Strassenger, Foot, and Brunzel. So, kung sa formula, you have log of SA, or surface area, is equal to 0.425 times log of the weight of the patient in kilograms, plus log 0.725 times log of the height in cm minus 2.144. Basta hindi ay, no? In the word exam, wala ko yung nomogram. Ipasolve mo ani, di ba? Okay? So that's the other formula, alright? Wala sa nomogram. If wala kayo nomogram, that's the formula you use to get the patient's surface area. Alright. Now take note, dears, that volume, alright, volume, that's in 24 hours. Now take note that ang imuhang unit for creatinine per clearance is ml per minute. So for me, para mas mag-gets pag yun ako nang divide ang formula. So urine over plasma times volume of the patient over bilaman, 1,440 minutes. Sir, asa ko ng 1,440? That's the equivalent number of minutes for 24 hours. Take note that 24 hours in one urine, so you have to convert that to minutes para na kay ml per minute. Diba? This is ml, right? ml per minute times last 1.73 meter squared over surface area, which is still meter squared. So makancel ang units. Can you put your dears? Take note, the urine and plasma creatinine should be in the same unit. Dapat usually mg per dl siya. So dapat same unit para makancel ang units. So cancel, ang mabili na lang yung is ml per minute. Alright, so again, U over P times V over 1440 minutes times 1.73 over area. So muna siya kung formula na gina-master. Because para mag-gets na ako, ma-sure ko na volume, ma-convert na ako, or ma-over na ako siya 1440 minutes. Because again, take note, ml per minute in have unit. Alright? So that's for your creatinine clearance. Alright, take note of that. So U over P, take note, taas ang U, alright, P. So how do you remember UP na lang? No, University of the Philippines. UP. Okay? UP times V over minutes and 24 hours, 1440. Alright? Pero if 12 hours lang yung urine, of course, hindi siya i-change para ma-equal siya. Alright? Pero kung 24 hours, 1440. Okay? That's the formula for your creatinine clearance. Okay. Now, example, sample problem ninyo. Ay, walang sample problem. Sige, try to solve that sample problem. Wala ako nabutang this PowerPoint. So I think, try to solve it using this. Okay, ang answer ana is 120 ml per minute. So if you answered it correctly, okay na. Ay, ito na, naman yung copy din. Sige, ato isolve. So ang given nila is urine creatinine, right? Urine creatinine of 120 mg per dl. Plasma creatinine of ilaman, 1 mg per dl. Very easy. Volume daw mo is 1440, 1440 ml. So over, pila ka minutes and 24 hours, 1440 minutes, times normal body area, so meaning 1.73 po siya, over 1.73. So very easy na. Cancel everything. This is 1. This is also 1. Okay, cancel the units. Mabili na lang ml per minute. So the answer is 120 ml per minute. So na siya answer na sample problem. So I hope na-gets lang here siya. Basta take note, the numerator is urine creatinine over plasma creatinine. Okay, so that's for the clearance tests. Now, because of the inconvenience, no, of collecting 24 hours urine, no, a lot of studies have been made to form an equation or a formula to calculate the glomerular filtration rate without using your urine creatinine, and that is now the estimates. Ayan. The calculation of the glomerular filtration estimates, and there's a lot of formulas here. Nila na ko siya record and memorize kaya kay numbers. Okay, I'm going to take note here kung saan ang mga variables ang included. Number 1, you have cockcroft and gold. Okay, those are the variables are included: age, sex, and body weight in kilograms. Number 3 of the MDRD, modification of diet in renal disease. This is from the 5th edition of Strassinger. Those are the variables are naa, age, sex, ethnicity, or race, serum albumin, and also BUN. All right. So age, sex, ethnicity, or race, and serum creatinine according to Henry's. And then for Strassinger 5th ed, PhilAm, BUN and serum albumin. So why am I talking about this? Because in the board exam, na yung mga questions which of the following variables is included in the formulation or in the formula for the MDRD, in the Cockcroft and Gold? Okay? I think nagawa siya sa quiz board sa PAMEC last September. So unsa to na variable, nalimot na ko. So which of the following variables? So that's mura na siya memorize. Ayaw na formula. Okay? Medyo intense na siya. Alright? Sige. Next, you have the simplified MDRD, okay, which is what is usually commonly used now, all right, from Henry's. And then you have the CKD EPI, the equation for GFR. So medyo, PMI. So you don't have to memorize the formula. I-familiarize na sa mga variables involved, okay? So sa Cockcroft and Gold, age, sex, and you have body weight in kilograms. And then you have modified disease, modified diet in renal disease, MDRD. You have age, sex, ethnicity, okay, serum creatinine, BUN, and serum albumin. So take note. Okay, question now: which of the following variables will affect or is included in the formula for blah? All right. Okay, so that's for the renal function test for glomerular filtration. All right. Okay. Sige, kapit ka mo man. Yes. Any questions, viewers? Any clarifications? Carry back. Kapit na mo man. Okay. Sige. All right. Next, we go on to the next function, your tubular reabsorption. All right. So the test that we perform to detect or to measure tubular reabsorption is your concentration test. Your concentration test, by the name itself, it's the ability of the tubules to reabsorb, okay, the substances and concentrate the urine. All right. Now, as we mentioned, ultrafiltrate that enters the tubules has a specific gravity of 1.010, meaning gikan sa imuhang glomerulus, ang imong SG is 1.010 sa filtrate. Pero pag agi sa filtrate sa different tubules, you will expect na medyo mo change ng SG anak. Because again, daghan ng solutes na na-reabsorb, daghan ng solutes na ni-secrete, etc. etc. So expect you ka na di na same of SG ay mo filtrate from the glomerulus buccal padulong sa mga tubules na. So leaving the glomerulus, it's 1.010. Pero pag abot na sa urine and sa collecting ducts, of course, lahi na dapat ang SG niya. Alright. So what are the tests to perform? You have the obsolete test, you have the Fishburne and the Mosenthal test. These are fluid deprivation tests. Hindi mo siya painom ng tubig, no? Yeah. So patient is deprived of fluid for 24 hours, and then we measure the SG. So dapat yun expected taas ang SG because wala pa kay tubig, di ba? Nagipainom. So therefore, your body will conserve water, di ba? So therefore, ang imuhang urine is full of concentrated solutes. Therefore, yung SG taas. Okay? So that's expected sa Fishburne. And Mosenthal do the same. We compare the day and night urine in terms of volume and SG. So nadiri, ang normal na result, dapat ang daytime urine volume is higher compared to night volume. And the SG of the nighttime should be 1.020 or greater. So dapat mas taas ang SG sa gabi, eh medyo mas daghang dito mas daghang ma-release ng mga solutes. Alright, so that's the normal for the Mosenthal. But these are obsolete tests, and medyo time-consuming, labor-intensive, and aside from that, medyo lisod ko interpret ang results. That's why we use other tests, specifically your specific gravity and osmolality. Now take note the difference of the two. Alright, SG is affected by both the number of the particles and the density, meaning unsa kabuhaton ay mukhang particle. Because remember that SG is a ratio of the density of a fluid against the density of your distilled water. Alright, so you're measuring density. Okay, so therefore, ang mga specific gravity, ma-affected siya by the number of solutes found in the solution and also the density. So siya kabuhaton. Alright, so it's useful for screening, pero if you really want to be accurate, it's not the test of choice. Rather, it's osmolarity. Osmolarity atong test of choice if you want to really evaluate the concentrating ability of your tubules. Why? Remember that osmolarity is only affected by the number lang of particles. So therefore, makainom ka na, taas yun ang osmolarity, no? If makainom ka sa patient or sa sample, taas yung osmolarity. And I remember that osmolarity is only affected by the number of solutes. So therefore, makainom ko na, kung taas yung osmolarity, meaning daghan jud yung solutes na naa. Okay, di ba remember that osmolarity is only affected by the number of solutes. So therefore, kung taas yung osmolarity, the reason for the increase in osmolarity is the increase in the number of solutes. So meaning, kung taas yung number of solutes, it means the tubules are not able to reabsorb na or concentrate well the urine. Kaya ano man, daghan na mga solutes na naa. Whereas kung specific gravity magod, imuhang i-compare, remember that specific gravity, number and density. Kung taas mo specific gravity, you cannot say na murag it's because daghang solutes. No. It could be that maybe daghan ram dagko na mga molecules na maka-affect sa SG, which does not necessarily correlate na ang renal concentration ability is defective. No? Nag-gets siya akong point. Basta ang SG magod is talking about number and density, di ba, of your particles. So meaning, if taas ang SG, it does not mean na ang urine daghang solutes. Okay? It could only mean na the solutes found there could be big because your SG is affected by density. Whereas kung osmolarity ang increase, makaingon ka na kung taas ang osmolarity sa solute or sa urine, daghang solutes na naa dito. Bahala kinsa pa na solute because ang osmolarity affected lang by the number of particles. Okay? So meaning kung daghang solutes na naa sa urine, regardless of kung sa siya na type, it could only mean na may problem sa tubular concentration. Alright? So that's why osmolarity ang mas preferred over specific gravity to evaluate the concentration ability of your renal tubules. Okay? So I hope na-gets what Tisha Beers. baka medyo confusing. Pero sige lang. Again, SG. No? Take note. SG. SG is affected by, it's a number of particles and density of the particles. Osmolarity is only affected by the number of particles. Now, let's say naka-urine specimen, taas yung specific gravity. So, makainon ba ka na daghan siyang solutes na naa? No, because although makainon ka na daghan, pero it could also mean na ang solutes na naa dito kay katong mga dagko na mga solutes. Alright? It could be like let's say lang, it could be na imuhang sample daghan dyan siyang glucose ra, or daghan siyang urea, or daghan siyang mga dagko na creatinine, no? But it doesn't mean na guba imuhang tubules. Whereas kung osmolality, kung taas yung osmolality, because osmolality is only affected by the number of particles. If taas ang osmolality, makainom ka na, daghan yun ning solids na regardless of the type. So it could be daghan glucose dito, daghan salts, daghan bang creatinine, daghan etc. Because again, number ang nagmatter sa osmolality. Okay? So mas makainom ka na, kung taas ang osmolality, it could be na natin problema sa renal tubular concentration. Kaya kanisya na solute, example, mga salts, this should be reabsorbed. Pero nga naman yung abot sa urine. Kani mga amino acids, example, nga naman siyang naabot sa urine na this should be reabsorbed. Okay? And the presence of these amino acids, if daghan sila kaayo, ma-affected ang osmolality. Alright? That's why osmolality is preferred over specific gravity. Okay? I hope you get the question. Alright. Now, for fluid deprivation test here, this is very important to evaluate polyuria. Let's say you have a patient na polyuria. Daghan kayo siya ihit, no? Your polyuria, of course, daghan kayo ang ihit. So, you're expected na imuhang osmolality is gamay. Kaya diluted imuhang ihit. Gamay mo ang concentration of solids na naan. Alright? Now, your polyuria, if you want to determine if it's pathological or healing, then you have to perform the fluid deprivation test, no? So, after fluid restriction, if after fluid restriction, if imuhang osmolality, urine osmolality kay greater than 800 na, it means that imuhang patient is normal na. Medyo, ang reason nga na siya nag-polyuria kay increased fluid intake. Alright. Pero, kung after fluid restriction or fluid deprivation, imuhang osmolality kay mabak na gyapon, alright, you need to perform an ADH challenge na. Alright, so mo-inject na kang ADH. After injecting ADH, ang imuhang osmolality kay na-increase, it means that your brain doesn't produce ADH. And that is the neurogenic diabetes insipidus. Because take note na normal, may taas na yung osmolality after ADH challenge. Okay? Meaning, iyahang ADH, wala ADH na produce. Okay? After fluid restriction. Okay? That's neurogenic diabetes insipidus. Pero, pag produce sa ADH or pag inject ng ADH sa patient, wala dyan po isakay ang osmolality, that is nephrogenic. Naiguba sa tubules, ang receptors niya to ADH delay mo function. Alright? So that's the difference. Okay, take note, diba? Fluid restriction man. Okay? Fluid restriction. So after ADH challenge, if the urine osmolality is still high or is high na, it means there is neurogenic diabetes insipidus. Meaning, imong brain or among hypothalamus wala nag-produce mo ADH. And kung gamay na imuhang 400 imuhang osmolality, it is nephrogenic. Naiguba sa tubules, dili mo react. Wala receptors for your ADH. Alright, that's how we differentiate. Alright, we'll discuss again diabetes insipidus when we go to chemical exam. Alright, so ato lang i-refresh. Okay, so that's for differentiation of polyuria. Alright. Now, the laboratory, another method for determining your tubular absorption or concentration, and even osmolality is your freezing point osmometers. So take note, diba? Freezing point, mga colligative properties. Remember, at the mnemonic, FBBO. Kung increase ang solute, kung increase ang body odor. So, kung increase ang body odor, BO. Boiling points and osmotic pressure. Pero, kung decrease, CFB. Freezing points and vapor pressure. So, this is the principle, no? So, i-measure ang freezing point sa imong solute, as imong solution, and then if we decrease siya, then that corresponds to the milliosmos or concentration of your solutes. That's freezing point osmometers. Na po yung vapor pressure osmometer. Alright? So, ang point ng kato, FBBO, no? In increased solutes, mo increase ang BO, boiling point and osmotic pressure, pero mo decrease ang FB, no? So, freezing point and vapor pressures. So, freezing point osmometers, for every decrease, alright, in your freezing point by 1.86 degrees Celsius, that's equivalent to 1 mole of the substance. Alright, so when I decrease, there is an increase in the solutes. Okay, FBBO, colligative properties. Alright, and the last test is for tubular secretion. Alright, so for tubular secretion, you have the PAH, P-amino hippuric acid test, or also known as the diodrast. So the principle of this is similar to glomerular filtration. Alright, similar as a clearance test. Okay, ang PAH. Alright. Number 2 is PSP, phenosulfonphthalein test. Obsolete na siya. Results are hard to interpret. And of course, test for titratable acids. Diba? Remember, ganina, nag-discuss na about phosphoric acid, ito mga sodium phosphate, no? So, kanila sila mga titratable acids. Meaning, pag titrate nato sa urine using NaOH, sodium hydroxide, pag abot sa end point, pwede ito makalculate ang concentration sa imuhang acid sa urine. Alright? Because it's expected na a normal person excretes 70 milliequivalents of acid per day. Alright? And in the formation of titratable acids, again, or hydrogen phosphate ions, or again, ammonium ions. Alright? And this ammonium ions, pwede na siya ma-detect through the oral ammonium chloride test. So, mukha ng patient to tablet with ammonium chloride, and this ammonium chloride will produce urea and HCl. Alright? And this will lead to acidic urine. So, if failure, dili mo acidify ang urine after this test, it indicates renal tubular acidosis. Alright? So, that's for the tubular secretion ng mga tests. Alright? And that's all, no, for today sa renal function. So tomorrow, dears, I think 1, 2, 3, no, we'll finish introduction to UA until physical exam of urine. So any questions before we leave? Alright? Again, unsa yung pH or describe the urine of patients with renal tubular acidosis?
Alkaline.
Okay, alkaline. Very good. Okay, tapos, the site of final concentration sa urine. Final concentration.
This collecting the
Collecting the
So, initial concentration is your
Proxima.
related to blue.
proximal, pwede po sa loop of N. Alright? So, dito the kita. Okay? For the main site of reabsorption, for your substances, you have the main site for tubular reabsorption is your
Loop of an
the PCT pa rin. Okay? Proximal convoluted tube. Alright. Sige. Any questions here before we end? Nakagets mo, dears. Ano may nasabi? Yes. Yes, bye.